Hi, and welcome to Kelly, where we talk about life, your life and my life, and through Kelly we hope to inspire. Today I have Denise Fleck on the show, and Denise does a really unique thing. Actually, you started off working for Paramount Pictures.
I did.
And what I want to know, we'll talk about that too, but how did you go from working with Paramount Pictures to being a Pet Safety Crusader?
Well, I was a publicist and I was having a good time of it, but it wasn't something really feeding my soul. And they always say you need to follow your passion. And at about that same time, we had a yellow Labrador retriever named Sunny who suffered a back injury. And I just didn't want to leave her home alone, you know, during her recovery period, and I knew she'd need to be watched. She was really my first furry child, because I was raised by a Great Dane and always had animals in my life, but this was my first one as an adult, and my husband and I had adopted Sunny as our first wedding anniversary gift to each other to make ourselves a family. So she was really, you know, my baby. So my husband was kind enough to let me leave my job, and I started exploring things, and at about the same time Sunny had that injury, I heard they were starting to train people in pet first aid. And when Sunny had suffered this injury, it was really you know, a difficult thing not to know what to do when your furry kid was hurt, because at that particular time we lived in a house in the Hollywood Hills that was literally 110 railroad tie steps from the car to the house up the hill.
Wow.
And having, you know, almost 100-pound dog unable to move, it would be a daunting task to carry her down. So we did get her the help she needed, and she bounced back to her fun-loving self, but I was just determined never to not be, you know, to be caught unaware of what to do when something happened. So I just jumped on the bandwagon, started learning everything I could about first aid skills, because the idea with first aid is to render assistance and prevent further injury before you get to veterinary service. You know, it's not an end-all in itself. And I just started training. I started volunteering at shelters, doing all kinds of hands-on work. I became a member of an animal response team, and one thing led to another, and each of my successive dogs have sent me on a different path, but something related to animal care.
That's amazing. And you have done, I mean, you've done really well with this, and hats off to your husband, because, you know, to let you quit your job, where I would think you were doing pretty good with Paramount, and to stay home with your dog, that's amazing.
It really, really was a wonderful thing for him to allow me to follow my passion, and I think it's what makes a difference, because if you're doing something you really care about, you give it your all. And like I said, then my eyes were more open to other things. Sunny got me teaching pet first aid and CPR classes, and then as a natural complement to that, I developed a line of pet first aid kits. After Sunny passed away, it was actually a photo of her and I in a magazine that had somebody call me and tell me about a dog that was in need. And we adopted that dog. Her name was Sushi, and she was a 9-year-old Akita, amazing girl. But I wrote an article about her that ended up in what was then called Dog Fancy magazine, and that sent me on my magazine writing career.
And also it probably opened people's eyes to adopting a senior, because people always want the puppies.
Absolutely, and obviously, yes, Kelly, that's one of the things I definitely want to talk about today, because November is Adopt a Senior Pet Month, and with a senior dog or a senior cat, what you see is what you get. They've already grown into their bodies, you know how big they're going to be. Volunteering at a shelter, it was just so depressing sometimes, because people would relinquish a pet saying, well, I didn't know it was going to get to be this big. It was a German Shepherd. How did you not know it was going to get to be this big? You know, I just always try to encourage people to realize that a dog or a cat is a commitment for life. It's not like a pair of shoes or I was going to say a record album, and then I realized I dated myself. What is it? A CD or whatever, you know, that you can change your mind about and get another.
Yeah, and I would think really understanding, I mean, educating people that when they get a pet, they need to find one that fits into what their schedule is, what their life is, how big their apartment is, how much room the pet has to roam, because too often, yes, they get a pet and it's cute and it's a baby, and then it gets older, they don't have enough room for it, and unfortunately that's a bad place for that pet.
Exactly. It's all about doing your homework, and like you said, puppies and kittens are adorable, but it's kind of like being a grandparent and getting to enjoy the grandkids and then, you know, leaving. That's the way I start to feel about the puppies and kittens, because they are adorable and I've had many, but senior pets are calmer. They can fit into a busy lifestyle better. You still want to walk them and get them exercise, because it's not just for their muscle tone and their weight management, but by giving them cardio, you know, whatever they can handle, it actually nourishes the brain. And since we're doing so many wonderful things now with nutrition and medicine, and we're able to keep our dogs and cats around longer, they're also being plagued by some of the things that humans are as old age happens. It's not just the gray brows and the stiffness. They're getting a cognitive dysfunction where they're, you know, losing a little bit of memory, forgetting their training, seeming a little distant. So it's great, you know, to keep that good oxygen and blood flowing to the brain through exercise, which can help nourish that.
Right, that's beautiful. That's wonderful, wonderful things to pass on to people. And you wrote some books for children. Let's talk about the books.
I did. Well, I've got what's called the Don't Judge a Book by Its Cover series, and it's an illustrated book, which I hope, you know, keeps people entertained and they have a good time with it. Beautiful drawings by my friend Lily Chin, and I just perfectly opened to this page because this is Mr. Rico, and he was my black Labrador retriever who could lick a smile onto even the grumpiest kid's little face, and he's the star of this book. And don't judge a book by its cover means not to judge a person, an animal, anything by what you see on the outside, but take that time to find out what's underneath, because that's where the treasure lies. And it, you know, talks about the love of senior pets, and also how difficult it is to get black-coated dogs adopted. People hear a lot about, you know, black cats being bad luck, and in some countries, in England and Japan, I think they're actually considered good luck. But dogs with black coats are sometimes left at shelters much longer than other animals, simply because in the movies they're made to be the evil dog. The dark fur sometimes doesn't photograph as well, or it looks more menacing. Sometimes when somebody goes to a shelter to look at a pet, and nowadays everybody looks at everything online, so if it isn't a good photograph, or if the pet's in the back of his run, he doesn't show as well. So there's a lot of reasons, but it's just another way that we do, you know, judge animals, and just like we do people. So I really am trying to break those barriers, and the reason I started writing children's books is because I was teaching a high school animal care class. And one week in particular, I was teaching them how to read pet food labels, to really go over the label and understand what's in there. And I started getting calls from the parents. The kids were actually going home and sharing the information with the parents, and the parents wanted to buy better food for the family dog or cat. So I realized that although kids don't always listen to their parents, parents do listen to the kids, and if I start writing books for the younger generation, they'll share it with their parents and grandparents, and hopefully more people will affect changes in the lives of animals.
Yeah, smart, smart, smart. That's the reason that I started working with kids to begin with. I do have an adult class now that I teach with acting, but originally it was for kids because I came from ensemble work, so I wanted to be able to teach teamwork and working together and all those positive skills that I learned growing up. And I felt like that if I taught that with the younger generation, that they would be able to permeate that into the environment, because we are our environments.
Well, exactly, and everything we talk about these days, you know, it is really about educating the next generation of animal caregivers, or of whatever, you know, industry we're talking about, because they're going to be the ones running this place when we're a bit older.
Right, right. So you've been on The Doctors.
I have.
You've been on CNN. What else have you been on?
I've been on quite a few Animal Planet shows. Groomer Has It and Pit Boss. I don't know if a lot of the audience knows Shorty with all the pit bulls, but I taught them all how to do CPR and other animal skills in case, you know, something happens when they're rescuing an animal.
So is that what you do? You go around and teach CPR and teach people how to, if something happens to their pet?
Exactly, that's my specialty. I often would teach at shelters or doggy daycare centers or just places in the community, and I do conferences as well, but I teach basic first aid and rescue breathing, and it's actually now called CPCR, cardiopulmonary cerebral resuscitation, because we've just added a little bit to the protocol to really emphasize getting that blood and oxygen to the brain. Then I also teach on pet disaster preparedness, because all you have to do is look at the TV and see that there's a fire or a flood or a hurricane or an earthquake, depending on what part of the country you're in. And I have found that the people in my realm, at least, are more prepared for the pets than they are for themselves. And like you and I were talking about earlier today, if you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of the animals. So it's really important we all get disaster prepared for ourselves as well.
I love that.
And then the last little tidbit of what I do, besides pet safety in general, is classes on caring for senior pets, because that is my soft spot.
Right. Now, how do people get in touch with you if they want your services or want to know more about you?
Thank you. Absolutely, the easiest way is my website, www.petsafetycrusader.com. My company is called Sunny Dog Inc., after the yellow lab that I mentioned to you earlier, but over the years, Pet Safety Crusader has become my little trademark, because face it, comic book characters have become cool again, and it helps get me into that younger market. But you know what? There's a lot of older people into the comic book characters too, so I think I'm crossing all barriers.
Right, I love that. So, final words. If there are people out there that maybe want to own a senior pet, what would be your advice to them?
Well, the selfish promotion would be to buy the autumn and winter of your pet, but what I really say is do your homework, assess your lifestyle, how much time do you have to give. Also realize that a big pet sometimes can fit in a smaller place if you're around, because he doesn't need as much exercise. A lot of people adopt greyhounds that have retired from rescuing because they're actually couch potatoes.
All right, one more thing. To each of my guests, I give them a gift of candy, and you said you like sour lemon, so I got you lemon heads. This is to just a symbolization of that you are a gift and a gift in the world, and it's just a little small token to remind you that you're a gift, and thank you for being my gift on this show.
Thank you so much. That's awesome.
You're welcome. So thank you guys for being here on Kelly, and we hope this segment educated you and inspired you.